I don't usually post 2 videos in one day, but there has now been some more details available about DLSS 5. I made my initial video literally on my lunch break. I didn't say that in that video, but I had an hour lunch break, and I just popped open my phone. I scrolled tech news, and Digital Foundry video, actually it was the article, popped up. And I was like, interesting. DLSS 5, I hadn't heard anything about that. So pretty much just fired up the camera live, looked at some side-by-sides, and yeah, I was absolutely right when my first thought was this is going to be incredibly controversial. And man, reading through the comment section, I'd say it's about 75% wow, AI slopification, really, is this what's happening? And then there's some people with a more like, okay, like, you know, when you look at the Starfield character, it certainly looks a lot more realistic, etc. But I think there's a lot of questions about how much is this just destroying artistic intent, which was also the biggest point I brought up in that video. So I was curious with NVIDIA's official information available now, which again wasn't available when I made my initial video, if there's any additional information on that. And there is, but I also don't think it completely solves that problem. So also in my initial video, my understanding based on reading what Digital Foundry had said was that this was about a neural understanding of the light in a scene, whereas actually reading what NVIDIA has officially stated, it sounds not so much just like that. So yeah, I've got to say, the more information out here now and the more I'm actually seeing video of this, the more skeptical I am on this. And honestly, my biggest thought is this just shouldn't be called DLSS. This should be like a filter in NVIDIA's filter tab on their overlay. Because in the NVIDIA app, there's like an overlay with some filters and you can change the way the game looks. And that's what this feels like. Now, it's certainly one that can add a level of hyper-realism to a game, but also a level of uncanny valley to the game, and a certainly feels like it changes the artistic intent of what a character looks like when we go over this. Where, yeah, suddenly are we wearing like different makeup, etc. A lot of people calling this Instagram filter, etc. So anyway, there's a lot to talk about here. So let's get into what additional information is there since my first video. Again, in my first video, I pretty much just had the still side-by-sides from the Digital Foundry text-based article. The Digital Foundry video also has some scenes that are less about faces. There's like a forest here in Assassin's Creed Shadows, so maybe we'll take a quick look at that, because really everything else seems to be focusing a lot more on characters. Again, it makes a big change in the overall scene, and there is a new element of hyper-realism. I've got to say, this is like filming a screen and then I'm watching a video of that, so harder to get a good feel for that than the full screen stuff that we have posted here. But again, these don't seem to focus so much on the environment. So you know, it's harder to make a big call on this. I get less of the uncanny valley feel off of this than I do from something like this. Now this, again, I was initially looking mostly at still images. This, seeing a little bit of motion applied to it, makes me feel a lot more of the uncanny valley feel, especially when we look at Starfield, because, okay, Starfield's a really weird version of this because, let's be honest, the Starfield actual characters in the game do look pretty bad. But when I see them in motion with this like AI filter over it, it really calls into question more of that like uncanny valley feel. Like, in other words, seeing a unrealistic looking video game character move kind of unrealistically and video game like is a little bit less immersion breaking than a hyper realistic uncanny valley. Like the motion adds a lot to that uncanny valley feel, I guess is what I'm saying. Whereas in my initial video, I really had just the still images. So yeah, the more I see it in motion on the characters, the more just that uncanny valley feeling I get out of it. So, and again, there's that question about, is this just adding makeup to characters that wasn't even there? How much is it changing the model? Like I said, the information that was available in my initial video, it sounded more like this was just about light and changing light, not the geometry. Now that NVIDIA's made their official post on this, this is still nowhere near like a white paper on exactly how this works. I would be interested in that. But I'm getting more of a feel like it's, well, NVIDIA denies this just being like an AI filter, like an Instagram filter. It sounds more like that than it initially did when the only information I had was this Digital Foundry article. So let's read a little bit of the additional information we now have from NVIDIA regarding what this is doing. So one thing they're saying is DLSS 5 takes a game's color and motion vectors for each frame as input. So they are saying that it takes more than just a still image. Like it's not exactly the same thing as just taking a frame of the game as a still image with no additional information and applying an AI, Instagram filter to it. However, they are saying it's analyzing a single frame. Anyway, let me keep reading though. So it takes a game's color and motion vectors for each frame as input and uses an AI model to infuse the scene with photoreal lighting and materials. So also notice that. Infuse the scene with photoreal lighting and materials. So it does sound like this is more than just lighting changing. It's also changing the materials. And they're saying that it's anchored to source 3D content. But that is not the same, I think, as saying that it is not changing anything about the source 3D content. Saying it's anchored to it. But in what way? I don't feel like that really tells us exactly what is still anchored and how much is just like an AI. In other words, I guess what I'm saying is, how much does the AI actually understand the 3D scene that we're looking at versus we're looking at a still image from a 3D render and then an AI is applied on that still image, but they are having some motion vectors to help with consistency transitioning between scenes. So that's a question I have. Also, I have questions about latency, because if this is just taking, the game renders a frame, and then a AI, whether you want to call it a filter or not, the AI pass is done. Is that adding additional latency to the image? And again, they said the demo was running on two 5090s, run to render the game, with path tracing, and the other one to apply the AI model. Now they're saying when it launches in fall, it shouldn't require two 5090s, but that's another big takeaway is like, how long before this actually runs on realistic hardware that most people would actually have? And so that's a big question here. But again, how much is this understanding the actual 3D environment, the geometry of what's happening, versus just taking a still image that the game generated and then running an AI pass over that with like ask ChatGPT to make it a hyper realistic and add some makeup, right? Anyway, it says the AI model is trained end to end to understand complex scene semantics, such as characters, hair, fabric, and translucent skin. But again, none of that's telling me it's necessarily understanding the 3D environment that they're in, along with environmental lighting conditions like frontlit, backlit, or overcast. So, it could see in the image that somebody is frontlit, but does that mean it's actually dealing with lighting moving around the geometry? Like I'm getting some wrinkles here. How much is it understanding the geometry of the light in those wrinkles versus just accentuating them? Like speaking of wrinkles, like let's look at this character in Hogwarts Legacy. And then when we get the pass over that, those wrinkles look a lot more accentuated, right? Was that the artistic intent of this? And is that actually deeper than the model? Or is that actually the depth of the 3D model? And it's just like, because the lighting hits it differently, it looks very different. I do know that lighting can do a lot, but this does sound like it is more than just AI understanding the lighting, which was more of my initial take on it before there was this additional description of what was happening and I could look at the video. Anyway, it's saying that it's learning all that by analyzing a single frame. So again, it feels kind of like you're taking a 2D image, type model and just applying that fast enough that you can then render a game in real time, applying the AI pass to each frame. It says then DLSS then uses its deep understanding to generate visually precise images that handle complex elements such as subsurface scattering, etc. Anyway, now one of the big questions, again, that I highlighted in my initial video in the comment section is also big on this, is artistic intent. So in other words, Are we looking at a future where game developers just kind of make a 3D model and then just rely on AI to decide what that looks like? Like, how much if you play a game this way, are you experiencing a game the way the artists and developers wanted you to experience it? Or are you just looking at everything through your, AI Instagram filter, right? Like, Grace looks like she's put on some makeup, right? That does seem like a difference in the artistic intent of the scene. So NVIDIA has said that it does provide game developers with detailed controls for intensity, color grading, and masking, so artists can determine where and how enhancements are applied to maintain each game's unique aesthetic. And they're saying the integration is through NVIDIA's Streamline framework, used by existing DLSS and NVIDIA Reflex technologies. Now, they have a similar comment, but slightly different on one of their videos here. Hey, there's mine in the suggested. Yes, this is going to be controversial. I was right. Anyway, so noticing here, there's slight differences to how they phrase this. I don't know if we'll get much new information out of it, but we can read it. And I think they're replying to, there's a lot of negative comments about this. Anyway, important to note with this technology advance, game developers have full detailed artistic control over DLSS 5's effects to ensure they maintain their game's unique aesthetic. The SDK includes things like intensity, color grading, and masking off places where the effect shouldn't be applied. So that's the slight difference in phrasing here compared to what we're getting in this press release. So that's interesting. So masking off places where the effect shouldn't be applied. So it sounds like there's going to be some control over just saying, don't do any AI stuff to this part of the game. So that's interesting. Now, I've been thinking more about this artistic control, right? Developer control over it, though. And I have another big problem with that, right? Because game development is incredibly expensive and time consuming, right? So, I imagine that a version of this that isn't just dialed up to 11, like I'm assuming a lot of what we're seeing here is just like crank it up to 11. I imagine that maybe game developers putting in a bunch of time could hopefully produce a more, tasteful look with more direction how they want things to look. But at the same time, that would take game development time, right? Wouldn't that be a lot of additional programming? And if this is currently something that's running on 25090s in its current format, then how long is it before there's enough of a player base that would be using this for game developers to invest a large amount of time in wanting to tastefully, as much as possible, try to maintain artistic intent? So anyway, I think it's good that there does seem to be some level of developer control over it, although it's unclear exactly how much control they have over what the AI model does. It's good that there's some ability to control that. But again, it sounds to me like another thing on the developer's plate, because with other things, like, again, I don't think this should be called DLSS. Anyway, but with like DLSS upscaling, this seems like a fairly simple thing for a game developer to add to their game. And a lot of people can use it. It makes the game render quicker. Latest versions are in some ways better than TAA. So like, it doesn't seem like it takes a huge amount of time to get things right. To me, this feels like something that would take a huge amount of time compared to something like just kicking in DLSS, right? Now, they do have a bunch of games that they're saying are already announced for this. They're saying it's coming to Aeon 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Black State, Cinder City, Delta Force, Hogwarts Legacy, Justice, Naraka Blade Point, NTE, Neverness to Everness, Phantom Blade Zero, Resident Evil Requiem, Sea of Remnants, Starfield, The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion Remastered, and Where Winds Meet, and they're mentioning more. So it looks like they are working with developers to get this into the game. But again, how much is that going to be some like carefully crafted by game developers implementation versus just stick this feature in the game and give it a quick pass and then you get what you get? So yeah, I've got to say that now that I have seen additional information about this, seen more of it actually in motion, I'm a lot less, well, let's see, I was already not super positive about it. I had a lot of question marks about it. But I would say I am yeah, even more on the like really train. So yeah, I really don't think this should be called DLSS. I think if this was just like, hey, we were playing with AI in game rendering and we'll throw it in the NVIDIA app on the overlay as a filter option, and then maybe give the end user some of these like controls that they're saying the developer gets, like give it to end users. Like in other words, like what if this was more like your RTX remix kind of thing, or like like I said, like a filter in the overlay, and then maybe you give within that overlay filter some ability to tweak things like the intensity and the color grading, and how much is it applying to characters' faces or trying to change their makeup, the lip filler, right? If you look at that. So that's a big question, right? So anyway, yeah, I'm still interested in what you guys think in the comment section, and I still do want to, when we eventually get a chance to try this out hands-on, see what I think. I'm interested in seeing it actually implemented in games by game developers and what that looks like. But at the same time, this is all opening up questions about, I really do think, like I said in my first video, some people were questioning my use of the word transformative in the first video. Transformative means change. This is a transformative technology for game rendering. It is absolutely changing how a game is presented and to the end user. This is transformative. Transformative isn't always positive, though, right? Or sometimes there's positives and negatives. DLSS 1 was terrible. DLSS 4.5 is pretty good. So I'm curious whether this particular thing is the neural rendering that's going to take off. Like I said, it does look like from Sony and Microsoft, we're seeing the same idea that neural techniques being used in game rendering is something that they are interested in. So I think we are going to start moving into a world with more and more attempts at various applications of neural techniques to rendering games. And it's going to be weird, guys. It's going to be weird. I don't know how this is all going to play out. And anyway, that's the additional info that we have. I'll link all the sources in the video description. Like I said, after getting the additional information and seeing it more in motion, I've got a lot. Anyway, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment. Hope you all have an excellent day.